Can everybody hear me okay?
Not quite. Speak up a little bit.
Okay, I'll try to hold it up here closer.
There we go.
My name is Ginger Lee. I'm a new leader here at United Workers. We're a statewide human rights organization led by poor people. We're trying to organize so that we can speak out against the injustices of society. So, at any rate, we're Maryland only right now, but we are going to spread. How quickly, we don't know. Depends upon all of us.
That's right.
The more we get the word out, the more we can spread.
That's right.
Mm-hmm.
So, poverty is killing us. We're the richest state in the country, and we're the richest country in the world. But poverty is killing us. The denial of our basic needs to health care, housing, food, living wages is causing unnecessary death and illness. And that is why we launched our Right to the Health campaign, and to demand that everybody has got a right to live. We are here today at Allegheny College overlooking UPMC and the health department in Cumberland to speak up and speak out.
That's right. Yeah.
As fellow Marylander and fierce abolitionist Frederick Douglass once said, find out just what any people will quietly submit to, and you have the exact measure of the injustice and the wrong which will be imposed on them. We will not quietly submit.
That's right.
We will not suffer silently, and we will not suffer alone. It's okay. It's okay. You're fine. We are coming together across Maryland and across the country with other poor and working class people to tell the truth about our lives. Because we know that movements begin with telling the untold stories. We know that we are not alone here in Cumberland. In Baltimore, Cumberland, Westminster, United Workers is staging a Right to Health speak outs as part of the National Nonviolent Medicaid Army Week of Action. Would like to now have Elliot come up and read a statement about the Week of Action taking place.
All right.
Hi guys.
Hi.
This week we take action together as the Nonviolent Medicaid Army in 12 states across the South, Midwest, Appalachia, and the Northeast to declare Medicaid cuts equal death. We unite to say that the denial of health care is policy violence, and so is cutting 25 million people off of Medicaid in every state and county in the United States. Health care is a human right. The Poor People's Campaign has shown that poverty is the fourth leading cause of death in the U.S., and 800 people die every day in the richest country that's ever existed in the history of the world. Shame.
Shame. Awful. We did. Shame.
The Commonwealth Fund's newest study shows that our healthcare system is failing, and we are dying as a result of a system that puts profit over our lives. We lift up in mourning and honor the names of those we've lost: Roxy Hall Williamson, Miss Bernadine Kimball, Arrow Lind, Tyrone Nelson Murdoch, Brandon Colafello, and so many others. We cry justice and challenge the false narrative that this Medicaid purge is going back to normal, or that the millions who have been and will be cut can get health care through their employer or through the ACA. This is a public relations stunt. What is true is that millions will suffer without health care altogether, or under the crushing weight of copays, deductibles, denial of care, and medical debt. What will happen is the increasing homelessness, addiction, and imprisonment of the working class. But there is hope. We are uniting across all lines of division, getting into step and asserting our political independence. We won't be silent anymore. Thank you for being here today. Who are we?
The Medicaid Army.
Who are we?
The Medicaid Army.
I am so impressed with all that. That looks so good. Okay, the fight for Medicaid is connected to our right to health campaign, because how can we be healthy if we are denied health care? The same is true for all basic needs. How can we be healthy if we are denied housing, food, living wages, and adequate basic income? Our basic needs are human rights. Today we are lifting up our voices in song, chant, and powerful testimony. We will be hearing the plight, fight, and insight from emerging leaders in this righteous movement to end poverty and secure our right to health. But first, we're going to hear from Janet, wherever you are.
Hi, I'm Janet, and I took my report out of the report cover. So, over the past 10 years, poverty has become one of the top 4 leading causes of death in this country. The Washington Post investigated declining life expectancy in the U.S. and found that America is increasingly a country of haves and have-nots, measured not just by bank accounts and property values, but also by vital signs and grave markers. Dying prematurely has become the most telling measure of the nation's growing inequality. The Post also found that while opioids and gun violence have grabbed the public's attention by stealing hundreds and thousands of lives, chronic diseases have quietly become the greatest threat, killing far more people between 35 and 64 every year. These findings point to class warfare as the poor are dying. We live under an unrelenting system that both fuels and profits from poverty. Instead of addressing the issue methodically, some politicians and corporations fight every inch of the way to keep this corrupt, killing system going. Nearly 40% of Marylanders don't earn enough to make ends meet. Whether we are employed or trying to make it on a fixed income, we have to make heart-wrenching decisions. Do we pay the rent, or do we feed our families? Do we make the car payment, or do we buy school clothes? Do we keep the lights on, or do we get our prescriptions filled? We constantly and consistently face denial of the basic necessities of food, health care, affordable housing, and living wages, as Ginger mentioned. We are hit with sticker shock every time we go to the grocery store to buy milk, bread, and other items, as prices have risen 20% higher over 4 years due to supply chain issues and corporate greed. At the same time, many people's food stamps were cut. Some of our own members had theirs cut to as low as $20 or $50 a month. And about 50% of people who are food insecure don't even qualify for food stamps because they make too much money. This is a public policy that prolongs hunger and malnutrition. Several of our members were hit with the diagnosis of hypoglycemic seizures as a result of reducing meals to once a day of poor quality food. Another member was diagnosed with stress seizures when the bills started piling up and livelihoods spiraled downward. Many political leaders have also sided with corporations who put profits above our health and well-being, even of the citizens that they represent. And even though the COVID epidemic is far from over, across the country we have experienced Medicaid cuts ending COVID area policies that worked to keep people from losing this important life-saving health insurance. In Maryland, that has meant over 100,000 have lost their Medicaid coverage, largely as a result of a bureaucratic error. We also know that even if we have health insurance, we may not get the care we need. We hear from many United Workers members who are denied care every day. Private Medicaid insurers deny essential care, including cancer screenings, prescription medicines, and other expenses. And emergency wait times in our region are some of the worst in the U.S. We wait sometimes as much as 12 to 16 hours in hospital emergency rooms, only to be told they can't treat us for emergencies ranging from bicycle accident injuries to needed care for at-risk pregnancies. These issues force us to either go without care or travel hours at great expense across state lines to get the care we need.
Tell me about it. Florida,
I think we've all experienced some of that.
yeah. You can't get it in Florida.
At least 41% of Americans have delayed care and preventive services because of unaffordable costs, whether or not we had insurance. When we are denied care, we are more likely to experience chronic illnesses and preventable deaths. In addition, chronic pain from a lifetime of physically demanding work takes a toll on our mobility and damages our quality of life. Some of us have experienced hospitals discharging us to the streets when we are still sick. We have heard stories of hospitals sending homeless people to other hospitals only to discharge them in places they do not know and where they have no support. Homeless members have asked doctors to prescribe bed rest so that when they return to a homeless shelter, they are not forced out when they need to recover from illness and even surgery. Doctors have sometimes denied this request, and sometimes the physician's written request is ignored by shelter staff. In Carroll County, a pregnant mother was evicted, along with her elementary-age children, although her doctor had written a letter explaining that she had an at-risk pregnancy and needed bed rest. The shelter refused to comply and evicted the family without notice. We also know that shelters were unable to provide adequate safety from harm during this past summer's record heat wave, and one homeless woman with exposed wounds suffered second-degree burns. Most of us experience the torture of sleep deprivation as police routinely wake us up while we sleep in the only shelter we have, whether it's in our cars, on benches, or in encampments and parks. We are not permitted to sleep or rest our bodies. Lack of sleep is one of the most common health consequences of homelessness and poverty, and it can lead to increased stress, depression, anxiety, and fatigue. Chronic sleep deprivation can speed up the onset and severity of diabetes, hypertension, obesity, and memory loss. When and if we manage to find housing, it is often at a cost too high, putting us at risk of being homeless again. According to the U.S. Census report, nearly half of all residents are at risk of eviction, 21 million of us. Over 18 million homeowners were also at risk of foreclosure because of the high mortgage and insurance costs. Political leaders here in Allegheny County did not listen to constituents who needed relief from high rents. They were the only county in Maryland to reject the last round of eviction prevention funding. And when the funding dried up last year, eviction rates across Maryland climbed back up. On the eastern shores of Wacomico County, evictions are back to pre-pandemic levels, and in Washington County, in Hagerstown, reported homelessness rose by 50%. Political leadership throughout Maryland has failed to hold corporations accountable for their increasing reliance on low wages, anti-union practices, and automation. Our wages do not keep pace with the rising cost of basic needs. This applies to those of us who work service jobs in healthcare, retail, restaurants, and public education, and jobs that were once public but that have since been privatized. Many of us deal with the stress of supporting our families and communities without knowing from week to week what our schedules will be or how many hours we will work. We get points off when we call in sick or have to take a loved one to the doctor. These simple acts of caring for ourselves and our families can get us fired. And consistently across these sectors, we are underpaid, from restaurant workers to nursing assistants to cashiers. We don't earn enough to make ends meet. Many of us have had to take on 2 jobs just to get by, leading to even less time for our families, for school activities, for church, for community. These conditions lead to more social isolation, which the U.S. Surgeon General has said is at epidemic levels. The Surgeon General reports that not only is time with family at lower levels now, but time with a spouse or loved one is down 14 hours a month, and time with friends is down 20 hours a month. This social isolation has dramatic health consequences, including increased risk of premature death, a 50% increase in risk of dementia, and increased risk of heart disease and stroke. We are more likely to suffer depression, anxiety, and a greater risk of suicide when we are socially isolated. Right now, we are facing public policies at the local, state, and federal levels that are working against us, to divide us, and thus to disorganize us. Recently, the Supreme Court ruled that it was legal to fine and jail people for being homeless. In Cumberland, the City Council is debating a law supported by the mayor and the police chief that would make it illegal to eat food in a prominent city park at Washington's headquarters. In Baltimore, the Catholic Church is closing dozens of churches that provide communities with food pantries and Head Start education for our kids. It certainly seems that the ruling powers want us to disappear. But how can the 140 million poor and dispossessed in this country, including the nearly 40% in Maryland, just go away? We won't go away. And we demand to be heard. We demand to be seen. And as Martin Luther King said, we will become a new and unsettling force and demand our right to health and to be free from poverty.
Yeah.
And I'll turn it back over to Elliot, and we're going to sing a song about being a new and unsettling force. And Mike Hughes from Hagerstown is going to accompany us on the bass.
Yeah, a special surprise. Stay here with me. Most of you know this song. If you don't, we'll sing it a few times and you can join in when you figure it out. Ready?
I'm ready.
We
should tell them what the first line is.
Oh, we're going to sing it just a few lines. Ready? Mm-hmm. We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new, unsettling force, and we're here. A new, unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains. Yeah, we've got nothing to lose but our chains. We are a new, unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new, unsettling force, and we're here. A new, unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains. New, unsettling force, and we are powerful, a new, unsettling force, and we're here. New, unsettling force for liberation, and we've got nothing to lose but our chains.
Okay. Well, we're going to have a few people up here sharing their testimonies. First-hand experiences that shed light on the plight, insight, and fight for our right to health and freedom from poverty. Carrie's going to be coming up to read her poem. And then we'll go from there.
Yeah, all right.
Someone make sure this is.
Thank you. Yeah, so I'm Carrie. A lot of you have already at least known me for a little while, for some degree. And I've been living in Cumberland since 2010, continuously. And currently, I'm actually a student here at the college. I'm studying history, actually. I'm working on my associate's degree. But, yeah, I also like to write a lot, and I like to keep history in mind when I do write. So I haven't officially titled this poem yet, but I have an idea in mind. But I'll begin. You can't kill me in a way that matters, even if this body rots in a grave. I'm always a soul that never shatters, so I'll just come back on another wave. I don't care how many times I return, any amount will never be too great. My love for this world will forever burn, oath-bound to care for victims of hate. Don't give me a sword, I carry a book. I'd rather teach you than be made to fight. Just return to the people what you took, and come follow me into the true light. Hate will never win its war against love. It's not strong enough and never will be. Standing in hope higher than any dove, for as God's envoy, I will never flee. Thank you.
Now Melissa's going to come up and read a couple of her poems.
Butters.
He's ready to perform his status.
He's looking. Come over here. Sit. 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 No, sit. Good boy. My name's Melissa. I wrote a couple of poems, many poems actually. The first I'm going to read. Butters, get over here. I'm getting tangled up.
Might be a little nervous because of the crowd, maybe. Bye-bye.
Sorry about that. He's still getting used to being an ESA, also known as an emotional service animal. The first poem I'm going to read, I titled, What Do You Do? What do you do when your health is failing? When your medical insurance is cut? What do you do when you can't afford food? When you can't afford medicine? What do you do when doctors stop listening? When tests aren't enough? What do you do when bills can't be paid? When costs go up but income stays down? What do you do when a month's pet food is cheaper than a month's human food? When doctors can't find the answers? What do you do when you have more questions than answers? When your food budget shrinks but you still need food? What do you do when you can't afford rent? When you can't find clean water? What do you do when rent goes up but income stays the same? When utilities get shut off? What do you do when vet bills are cheaper than doctor's bills? When being poor costs too much? The second poem I'm going to read, you'll learn more in the next testimony, but It's dedicated to my late sister and her daughter. It's titled, You Left a Hole in Our Hearts. You left a hole in our hearts. You gave us a gift to care for her. You entrusted us to protect her. Now you've gone. And we need so many answers that even you didn't have. You left a hole in our hearts. You had so much going wrong. Your body needed mending, but you never got the answers. Now we're searching, looking for the healing she needs. You left a hole in our hearts. You struggled for years. You searched for the cause. Now we search and struggle, looking. But the answers aren't forthcoming. You left a hole in our hearts. You saw doctors. You went to specialists. Went for all the tests. Searching, always searching, never finding answers. You left a hole in our hearts. Your doctors didn't believe you. Your specialists didn't trust you. Now you're gone. And we need so many answers that even you weren't given. Number letters. 3. Get up there. That was a hard one for me and her. She was talking about my stepdaughter, Loretta, which is her half-sister. My name is Ginger, as I said before. I'm the single mother of 2 children. My son Brandon has a rare allergy to scented perfumes and colognes, candles, potpourri, you name it. We're allergic to it. And he got that from me. The older I get, the worse the allergy. I had to unplug the bathroom thingy in there because me and Carrie can't walk into the bathroom because it's right by the door and it was so stinky I couldn't breathe. And I was trying to breathe out of my mouth rather than my nose. So yes, it is a real allergy. My daughter, Melissa, has bipolar 1 disorder. She's classified as rapid cycling, which means you can snap your fingers and that's how quick she'll change moods. She'll go from manic to depressive to whatever else. It took us years and visits to over 25 psychiatrists and therapists to accurately diagnose her. In fact, her first psychiatrist told me I was suicidal. That was, let's see now, how old are you now? 30 years ago or more. And they said I was suicidal. I'm like, he only spent 30 minutes with me. And that was his diagnosis. I'm like, you gotta be kidding me. I fired him right away. Because, I'm sorry, that's the furthest thing from my mind. I had 2 kids to raise. I wasn't about to take my own life. So, it was stressful. Having a kid as sick as Melissa was, as hyper as Melissa was. Then my second child was my angel child. He rarely got into trouble. He rarely did anything wrong. But she took up all the attention because we had so much going on with her that I didn't get to spend time with him as much. And, of course, I worked full time. At any rate, I got so worried about her. She was the one that was suicidal at the time. She had her whole suicide planned out. And I told this to the psychiatrist that told me I was suicidal. And I'm like, really? You're going to say that? So, yeah. He wasn't the first psychiatrist I fired. Wasn't the first therapist I fired. We went through 25 of them before we got anybody to believe us. Yeah. And every one of them before the 25th one got fired. Eventually. And none of them believed me. And I was mom. I know my kids. Inside and out, I know what mood they're going to be in next. I know everything. Before she could even figure out what mood she was in, I knew what mood she was going to be in. So, yeah. It took a long time to get the diagnosis because the doctors weren't listening to what I was saying. I was telling them everything. They knew about Melissa. I'm her mother. She was 15 when I finally got her diagnosed. And that was when I finally said, she's just like my mother. I can't stand her anymore. So that tells you it's hereditary. She got it from my mother. And my mother was just as bad as her with the mood swings. So I grew up with it all my life. You know. But once we got her diagnosed, I hit the studies that were done by NIH for the different medications. Why not to put a bipolar child on ADHD medication? Stimulants in bipolar children do not work. Disorder. And we also had an author that sat in on our support group, listening to the stories of the different families and what they were going through and what each of their families went through, trying to keep their child safe. What kind of problems society was causing us. Some parents had to put alarms on the doors and windows to keep their children in the room. Or they would climb out the window and go down the 2 stories. So yes, we all had our trials and tribulations with the children. And that was when bipolar disorder really wasn't a diagnosis for children. It was just starting to be recognized. So, of course, none of the psychiatrists were going by the new DSM. They were going by the old DSM, which didn't believe children could have bipolar disorder. So they put Melissa on Ritalin, which caused her to be evil. It was the only time she would hurt her brother. And her brother, she was 11 years older than her brother. So every time she hurt her brother, I went and got her admitted to the hospital. And they wouldn't want to admit her, and I'd tell them, well, then you guarantee her safety or my son's safety. And, you know, what do we do now? You know, the hospitals didn't know. I would tell them, she's not right. She needs her beds adjusted. And they would not listen. So finally, Melissa's own psychiatrist took her off of the Ritalin after one of the major hospitals in Baltimore threatened to keep her on it because I brought in a 3-ring binder that was that thick, full of articles about why children with bipolar disorder shouldn't take Ritalin. She says, I know all these things. Well, then why are you putting them on? Plain and simple. Why are you putting them on this medication if you know it's going to make them evil? So now, Melissa's in her 40s. We found out she struggles with fibromyalgia, which affects the nerves all over the body. Trigeminal neuralgia, which affects the nerves in her face. And it went undetected for years. because I thought she was just a sissy to pain. You know, I was dealing with too many other things to figure that out. But yeah, her half-sister Loretta lived with us from the time she was 21 until she passed away at 34. She was one of the first patients in the ICU at the new hospital when it was built. And that was 14 years ago. We didn't know what all her problems were. I ended up having to go with her to the doctors. We thought she was being, a hypochondriac, but she wasn't. They were legitimate problems. But nobody could diagnose it because there were so many different things that nobody could get a hold of what was going on. They didn't sit down and think about it. Some of it was to do with allergies. Some of it was just to do with, she probably had the trigeminal neuralgia. She probably had the fibromyalgia. She definitely had the migraines that Melissa has. And we don't know what all other problems she had because they never diagnosed her. And that was in Baltimore as well as up here in Cumberland. They just didn't diagnose her. So I ended up having to go with her to the doctors so they would believe her. I would have to literally go in there and back her up with the doctors. And even when her daughter was born, they were hesitant about everything. She flat out told one nurse to get out of the room or else because the woman had perfume on and I was allergic. And the woman didn't want to get out of the room. And she was in full-blown labor at the time. That's how little they listened to us. So you have to learn to speak up for yourself. You have to learn that they work for you. You don't work for them. You know what's going on with your body. You know what's going on with your children's bodies. Don't let them tell you otherwise. Don't. Because I'm here to tell you, I fought with doctors from the top of the psychiatry at Johns Hopkins all the way down to the lowest doctor at Johns Hopkins or wherever else we went. I would go into the doctor's office with my son or into the hospital ER with my son with his allergy. He had been exposed to somebody that was wearing perfume and couldn't breathe right. But it didn't show up on all the monitors. But I knew because I knew how he sounded and that it was going to be a bad one. And I'd have to call his allergist to call the hospital to get them to listen to me because he listened to me. He was the only one that did. So you do what you have to do. You research the problems. And there's a lot of information out there on the internet. There didn't used to be. I was around before the internet, so yeah. You have to research. You have to. Now my granddaughter, she is dealing with issues. She is 22. 2 weeks ago, they told her she has pre-liver failure. They're still in the process of doing all the testing to find out what all's going on. Before she turned 21, they wanted to send her to Morgantown for everything because they don't have enough of the specialists up here for the children's issues. So, but with my job, I wasn't able to. I was working 4 hours away from home to be able to bring in a decent income. So I couldn't take her all the time. If they were local, I had people that could take her. But if they weren't local, I didn't have anybody to take her. And I was her legal guardian after her mom died. So I've raised her since she was 14, but she lived with me up until she was 8, full time, because her parents lived with me then. So I've been a part of her life since she was born. I was there when she was born. So you have to speak up, speak out. And you have to let them know that they work for you. You don't work for them.
Great.
At any rate, Evelyn has a lot of allergies, like her mother did. Her daughter has even more. Her daughter's only 3. She's allergic to milk, eggs, and a lot of stuff. But these are things that I taught Taylor to take her to go get those diagnoses. And Taylor does fight the doctors. I've taught her to advocate for herself just like I've taught Melissa to advocate for herself. And they make them listen. Because you have to. They won't listen otherwise. But the biggest thing, speak up, speak out.
Oh, move the camera.
Make the invisible visible.
Okay.
Yeah, who's next? Elizabeth.
Good evening, my name is Elizabeth Watson. As of April 2024, my foot was ran over by a car. My left toes were fractured. I waited in pain for 12 hours at UPMC emergency room. The Union Rescue Mission, the local homeless shelter, has mandatory chores. I got a note from the emergency room to be excused of my chores. And the shelter management ignored the note and made me climb 3 flights of stairs to clean the bathrooms and mop the floors to stay there.
Shame.
I still haven't had my surgery to prepare my left foot. It's on December 2nd, which is 9 months, that's 3 more months from now. There was a man at the shelter that was harassing me to the point of filing a restraining order on him. The shelter management refused to keep this abuser from staying away from me and made it impossible for me to eat meals with everyone in the dining hall. They would not provide me food for my other means. I didn't eat for 3 days until the man left the shelter. There are so many people out there in need because we can't afford to survive. The government does not put its money into the working class. They don't care about us. We're out here depending on shelters that can manipulate and take advantage of us. If we had the right to health, I wouldn't have to wait 6 months to 9 months to have surgery to repair my fractured toes.
That's right.
I wouldn't have to wait a half a day in the emergency room, and we wouldn't have to pay ridiculous prices at UPMC. It's time to stand up and make ourselves known. Don't be afraid. We can march right up to the government property in Washington, D.C. because they work for us, not the other way around. We deserve the right to health.
Yes,
These injustices are happening all the time to every one of us. Elliot, can you come up? She's going to be giving her testimony as well as April's.
Hi. My son has Down syndrome. He had spinal surgery at 8 months old and has another surgery next month. Since I had a high-risk pregnancy, my OB at UPMC recommended I give birth at WVU Memorial because UPMC is incapable of handling it. My son has regular specialist visits at WVU Children's Hospital because the services aren't offered in the area. Without Medicaid, there's no way I could provide him with the care he needs. I work 40 hours a week and can barely make ends meet as it is. My son has a genetic disability in his DNA. He was born with his struggles, but if I didn't enroll and re-enroll and re-enroll him in Medicaid, he would suffer. He would be denied care because I don't make enough money to survive. It's time to stand up and make a change. This world was not built for kids like mine. The government has the ability to provide what we need, but they choose not to. It does not have to be this hard. This is April's testimony. She was going to come today, but she is unfortunately sick. Her name is April Horning. I've been in various abusive situations my entire life, and I never got proper medical treatment for any of them. My second husband hit me so hard he knocked a bunch of my teeth out, and since I don't have dental insurance, they have just gotten worse. Before I got my apartment, a guy I was living with kicked me out, so I slept in my truck, parked in my friend's backyard in the winter for 2.5 months. I got food stamps, but there's not a lot to do with food if you don't have electricity or a safe space to store it. Luckily, my friend let me keep my food in her house, and she also did my laundry. I have a rare illness called Nutcracker syndrome that has caused one kidney to fail and the other one isn't doing great. I'm currently fighting for my Social Security benefits and for insurance to prove tests I need for cancer I have. My doctors have to fight with my insurance to get some of my recurring medications covered, but sometimes the pharmacy doesn't have it in stock or they lose the prescription. If the medications aren't covered, I have to pay for them out of pocket. I have many friends who can't get treatment for diabetes. One of them recently got both legs amputated at the knee. Another friend went to UPMC to have carpal tunnel surgery and is in the process of suing them now because her hands don't function properly. I don't want to jump through hoops to get the basic care I need. I don't meet people who are benefiting from the system that wants to feed the rich and stomp on the poor. The people in power don't wake up in the morning and wonder how they're going to manage to get a gallon of milk or a loaf of bread. United Workers made me realize there are people out there fighting for our right to health. It's time to stand up and speak out. Somebody has to hear us.
With you, April.
Is Izzy here?
Yeah.
Okay. Time for your poem.
Well, hello, I'm Izzy. At the cookout, I read another poem I wrote, but I wrote 2 more since then, and I feel like they hit me a lot more in my emotions than the rest of the poems I've written. The first one I'm going to read is I Shall Stand, and it goes like this. I shall stand here and preach. I hope everyone will hear what I speak. We are not even close to what they call weak. I shall stand here and teach. Every day I could lay, my unfound family feels dismay. The family from all over, it doesn't matter if it's far away. The ones who make sure we do more than just pray. Every day, not just part of the week, someone's hurting or weak. A couple years ago, they said the answer was to separate and fleet. The real answer is we must gather and meet. Meet all of the needs, see all of the seas, grow taller than the trees, feed all of the me's. I shall stand here and speak, I will stomp my feet. Every day, not just part of the week. We are everything but what they call weak.
Yeah.
The second one I wrote is called Unimportant. It's definitely not unimportant, but that's what it's called. Unimportant, they say. Well, I'll tell you what, I'm making my way. No reason they will tell me it's a no for the stuff that I pray. I don't just get this feeling in May or just in the day. Unimportant, they say. Just listen if you may. The world is more than stupid and hate. I mean, what would you rate? Have you thought about our fate? Unimportant, they say. In the darkness, it's even hard to see the gray. What do they expect? For us to sit and decay? We must fight back and make them pay.
We have another testimony. Amy?
Yes, Amy.
Before I share my testimony, I'm working on it and I'm talking as I walk. I want to share something that was shared with me at my job, my morning job. Many of you know I work 2 jobs. I was talking to another member to see if they was going to come. Well, a visiting director of nursing came up with us listening to part of the conversation. So I explained to him that we're having a speak out. We're part of a human rights organization with the Rights to Health campaign. And we're having a speak out against the corporation of the healthcare system. And he said, it is a corporation. He is 72 years old, been working most of his life, and feels he still has to work in order to afford his medications. And one of his medications, he doesn't even get a full month supply at a time. And he's 72 years old. At this point in time in his life, he should be enjoying his life. Whatever his hobbies are, whatever, he should be in retirement, enjoying what's left of his years. But he's still working and traveling. Not just, he's leaving his home and going to several different states where AgeMark has their businesses, be it assisted living, memory care units, day programs, whatever, and either teaching classes that are mandatory for us, or he's filling in for other director of nursing spots if they lose their director of nursing or whatever. And he's doing this just so he can afford his medications. And I felt the need, that moved me so much, especially with the Nonviolent Medicaid Army's week of speak out against it, because he lives in some other state. It's not just here in Maryland that people are struggling with Medicaid, with being able to afford their medications. Now, back to my testimony. In 22, I went for my yearly female checkup, my PAP, and everything. And at that time, it was around the same time I met United Workers, when Todd and Janet came knocking on my door, and Mike and some others were leapfrogging with Todd on my street. At that time, when I had that particular test, they found pre-cancer, which led to further tests. From October through the beginning of the winter months of that year, I was told that, hey, you have this pre-cancer. Because of your age, we highly suggest you have a hysterectomy. If I would have been, they even told me if I would have been in my 20s, maybe early 30s, still of what they consider childbearing age, they might have gave it a chance and just monitored it. But because of my age, I felt the hysterectomy was the better choice. But UPMC, even though they can do a hysterectomy, referred me to Mon General to oncology there, just in case they found more going on. Because UPMC would not be able to handle anything more than just a simple hysterectomy. And when I went to that oncologist, he too just found the precancer. In February 13th of 2023, I had my hysterectomy. I still had my ovaries, but they took everything else out. If it wouldn't have been for Scott, my support partner and partner in crime, which he went through hell, this whole time was hell for him. More, even though it was my body being ravaged, being tested on, poked and prodded, because he did not have the support system that he needed. I was his support, he was mine. He's lost everything to cancer. He's a cancer survivor himself. His whole family has died from cancer. And then to watch me going through this and not knowing, and he didn't have the support. We didn't know the United Workers at the time like we do now. And he had nobody. And that made it even harder. But his job, even though they have a point system, that he could have pointed out and lost his job because he'd rather be going with me to Morgantown and be there for me, despite whatever else it was doing to him. When I had my hysterectomy, he went and talked to his boss, and his employer actually let him go into debt with his time off, whether it be holiday pay, whether it be vacation, and his sick leave. He went into debt, and instead of accruing it afterwards, he was just paying it back until he could accrue it again. They really worked with him. When I went for my first follow-up from the hysterectomy, come to find out, they did find a cancer tumor roughly the size of the point of a ballpoint pen on my cervix. So all these tests were just overlooking or radiation or any other treatments. But they suggested for the first 3 or 4 years, I come every 3 months to see that oncologist. And then after that, every 6 months for so many years, and then once a year after that. After 6 or 7 years, it'd be one. You want to travel to Hagerstown, which from here, as many of you know, Hagerstown is roughly the same distance as Morgantown.
Right, the other way.
Yeah. So now I'm down to one time a year getting checked to see if it, of course it's not going to be cervical, but there's still, it could be ovarian, come up or whatever. And that's how the system works. And getting to a little bit of what Ginger was talking about, having to advocate for your children. This is my son. We've been through a lot together. He too has some mental health issues. And getting help around here is next to impossible. And we had one therapist actually tell him that she felt that marijuana is probably one of the best things he could do. He has ADHD, he has bipolar 2 that we know of. His brother, when he was 18 months old, a mom knows. Like Ginger said, a mom knows. My oldest son, he was walking perfectly. He would be walking across this even, and just all of a sudden, and wouldn't even trip, he would just plop down and stare. Or sometimes when selling at night, his one leg would lift and just drop like a lead. And it took me going to his doctor and going to his doctor and going to his doctor before they would send him for tests. Come to find out, at 18 months old, he was diagnosed with having a seizure disorder. While he was there having these tests done, he was showing signs of seizure activity without the physical signs. The scans were picking up seizure activity, but there was no staring, no tremors, nothing like that. So he has silent seizures. Luckily, as far as we know, he's not shown any signs of seizure activity in many, many years. But if I wouldn't have pushed and pushed and pushed, how long would it have taken someone to realize, hey, something's going on? His migraines, which aside from fluorescent lights, they believe the migraines that he had were related to his seizures. But if we wouldn't have known about seizure activity to begin with, it would have been just written off like everything else. We have to advocate for ourselves, and for those who cannot advocate, we need to be advocating for those who cannot. I work in the field where a lot of them, they do speak up for themselves, they try to, but many of them can't, for one reason or another. And who will listen to them? That's why we need to stand up now and not back down.
As you see, our medical professionals are not professional at all.
No, they're losing a lot of ethics. They really are.
They are not catching what the people are saying. They're not acting on what the people are saying.
Crazy.
And they're just not getting it. That's when you have to stop. And if you have to, fire them. Get somebody else. Yeah, a lot of the times we have to go to Morgantown or to Baltimore or to DC to get better care. You know? But if we have to, we have to. We have to fight for the rights of ourselves and our friends and our families to get the point across. And I swear to God, we should do a big speak out right in front of the hospital. So, anyway, Father Ty, it's your turn.
If you don't know me, my name is Father Ty Hollinger. I'm a priest in Baltimore. I've been a priest for 20 years. This way?
Yeah.
I didn't want to cover up this right now. Making the really invisible visible is what you've all been about, but
You were on the edge.
I know. We got cameras going on. I'm going live or something. We got, by the way, our comrades across the country in the Nonviolent Medicaid Army, Put People First PA, Vermont Workers Center, MDMA Indiana, and the Georgia NDMA, New York Poor People's Campaign, New York Nonviolent Medicaid Army. So many of our sisters and brothers are doing the same thing this week, and we're going to be inspired by everyone's stories together, including yours. I'm not from the mountains, but I've lived here for about 5 years, many, many years ago, in Mount Savage, and pastored 7 parishes in Allegheny and Garrett County, so I know these mountains. And I know the stories you're talking about, although back in my day there were at least 2 hospitals in Cumberland. But I remember that merger. And I remember it was even had a different name back then. Lots changed. That's what corporations do. They can relentlessly roll on, and they don't care how impacted we are. That's what I took away from tonight, from hearing from your testimonies. But I come from a different place. I come from the prairie. I come from a place where they were told you can roll a bowling ball from Chicago to St. Louis and it passed through the area I grew up in. But you know what? We were like 2-3 hours away from everywhere we needed to be too. So I know what that's like in my earliest time. I know it's like with my dad had to work into about his 70s too. Worked in a manufacturing plant. That over time, through deindustrialization, through this technological revolution we've all experienced, displaced and dispossess most of us from our labor and from the fruits of our labor. Well, he suffered through that too. That's why we need our poetry, we need our poets, we need our prophets, and everyone in this room is a poet and a prophet in some way. These stories are speaking out the truths that need to be heard. And we may need to find other venues to make sure that these stories are being heard by the people that need to be moved the most. Well, maybe that's happening because we need to be moved first. And we're getting into step together always. We do that as United Workers. We're getting into step with colleagues around the country. You know, I was just sitting back there and I was listening to you all because these were every single testifier. You should be very. We should just know that we are very thankful. You are very brave. You're very courageous to share what you share. And that's what we're doing right now. We're learning how to tell our stories, especially our stories of how this system has been killing those we love and we know. And it might even feel like it's killing us. But we're going to kill it before it can do that. And that's what this organization's about. That's why we get organized. We get organized to take what we're not given. And what are we going to take? We're going to take the things that human people deserve. I mean, to start off and hear about how people are being harassed because they don't have a place to sleep at night. And they're constantly, we know what that's like, being woken up, be told you got to move on. You can't even get a good night's sleep. And how can you even get a good night's sleep literally under the stars? Or there's already so much indignity in that, and the further indignity of just constantly being harassed. Being harassed and told you cannot eat in public? That is insanity. So there's a whole healthcare provision that needs to happen for the people that dream up these rules and regulations and way to continue to harass and suppress us and to keep us from doing this, what we're doing right now, which is coming together to get into step and to get in and organize and take what we need to take back before, again, it kills us. That chronic sleep deprivation. Just wanted to share one little thing, another kind of poem or song. It comes from a whole book of them. There's about 150 in there. What did I do with my phone? They're called the Psalms. They're like sung prayers, sung poems. They're very old. But I thought about when you were sharing today, I thought about this. First, this Psalm 121, it's kind of labeled, these are like liturgical songs and hymns and poems. It's a song of ascents. Ascending, going up, walking up. And that made me think of who we are here in Western Maryland. We know what it's like to have to go up the mountain and come back down it, and go back up it again, and come back down and drive on it.
And you say your prayers.
Say a prayer, especially on a foggy day.
Tell me about it.
I raise my eyes toward the mountains. From where shall come my help? My help comes from the Lord, the maker of heaven and earth. The Lord will not allow your foot to slip, or your guardian to sleep. Behold, the guardian of Israel never slumbers or sleeps. The Lord is your guardian. Now wait a minute. The Lord never sleeps. The Lord's guardian never sleeps. But the Lord isn't saying you shouldn't not have to be able to sleep. No, that's why we have our guardian. That's why we have this care that comes through our organizing so that we can get restful nights. Last night I shared how what's going on in this system, it's not just about health care. It's about, well, it is all about health care, but it's not just about our physical health, not even just about our mental or emotional health. It's also sometimes about our spiritual health, our community health, our social health. And right now, back in the city of Baltimore, 30 Catholic churches are closing by the end of November, by the beginning of December. You know, I was out here in the late 2000s, is that what they call that? Moved in 2010 back to the city. 7 parishes. I think only 4 of them are open now. And they're open as one big parish now. And I know the same thing happened here in Cumberland. I haven't had a single night's sleep that hasn't been awoken multiple times in the middle of the night. And what's waking me up? That voice of, I guess, my boss man saying, I guess it's time's up. What's waking me up and keeping me up is knowing the stories that our parishioners are telling too, about how this spiritual home of theirs and their family, generations, newly arriving people who have found a new place of comfort and sanctuary, now will no longer have that. They got to go on the move now for their spiritual health. And then I hear tonight from you about how we also have to fight sometimes our churches and our social service providers, right? How dare a shelter call them a union shelter when they make you go through such indignity? That's not what a union is. That's not what a union is. Shame. A union is when sisters and brothers come together and work together and are able to support one another. especially against the systems that oppress and harass, intimidate, that put up rules and roadblocks to try to suppress us. So that's not who, that's not who we are by any means. We come to fight against all that stuff. And so one of the prayers we've been looking to, some of us were on a summer study with the Nonviolent Medicaid Army, and we came across a prayer that, I don't know if we know who the minister was, or maybe it was a layperson that prayed this. It was a prayer for those on a final jump-off journey on the Underground Railroad, when people who self-liberated themselves from slavery would make it to the Niagara River, the Niagara Falls, and on that crossover into Canada, there was one bridge, small bridge, to get across. And so you can imagine, that's kind of a difficult place to make that last journey, to try to escape the power and the threat and the oppression of the fugitive slave laws. And so on that way from the United States into Canada, a final place of security and safety for people, this prayer was prayed. But I think if we think about that image, it might not be the Niagara River, it might be the mountains and the valleys, or it might be, the Potomac River. It might be the Inner Harbor of Baltimore or Jones Falls. We've got to make a lot of crossings across difficult terrain. And sometimes that's even mental terrain. And cross that over together and know that we're supporting one another in that. And so the prayer of blessing for us all tonight as United Workers is the same prayer that was spoken for these comrades of ours from the past who are teaching us by what they were able to do by themselves. Yeah, but only because they weren't just themselves. They came together. They came together. They shared their stories. They collectivized their knowledge, their wisdom, their power, and their strength, and they worked to help each other into freedom. And so this is the prayer. Bestow unto these passengers, that's us, the traits you gave unto these glorious falls, the terrain we're crossing. Give us the might to protect our weary bodies from disease and injury, physical, mental, emotional, spiritual. Give us the strength to push through the final leg of our most arduous journey. And political education is important, folks. Give us the clarity to see the bountiful lives that will await us on the other side. In your name we pray, amen. Now, folks, that I feel like that other side isn't some pie in the sky by and by, when we get to heaven. God wants that for every one of us right now, right here on earth. We should be able to taste and feel and know our freedom and our liberation right here. The scandal and the evil is that we're being deprived of that. And we come together as United Workers to fight with every fiber of our being against that. So, friends, it has been good for me to make a song, a passage of ascent up the mountain again, to be with you tonight. And we're together. We are United Workers across Maryland. And so what we're doing in Baltimore and in the areas around Baltimore City, what we're doing in central Maryland around Hagerstown and Westminster and Finksburg and all kinds of places, like what we're doing here in Allegheny County, maybe even sometime in Garrett County. Oh boy. Maybe we'll even find our way into southern Maryland down the road. Who knows where we're at? But we're going to be Marylanders coming together as United Workers, because we also have, there's also another prayer I'm thinking of now. A pastor gave this at a big convention, a big gathering like ours. They talked about the banners they had, the slogans they had on their banners. And then this pastor gave up a little prayer. Okay, I've got it here. I can hold on with me one second. This is sad because you're not getting just one prayer, which is probably one more than you wanted. This organization was a short-lived organization, but it was another, just like the Underground Railroad. It emerged out of real serious need, and we learned a lot from them. And it was a union of farmers in the South, especially sharecroppers. So those that didn't even have homes to live in, but had to work on the farms and work at below subsistence wages and realities. Tenant farmers who might have had their own equipment, but they were still beholden to the land of a landowner. and other poor farmers united together to form the Southern Tenant Farmers Union. They gathered in a convention in Oklahoma one year. Again, they had their slogans like, theirs were different than ours, but pray for the dead, fight like hell for the living. We take that from Mother Jones. We have the slogans you made out here, making the invisible visible. And of course, we've got Harriet Tubman telling us to lead ourselves and one another to freedom, to the freedom we need and deserve. But Owen Whitfield was the pastor who prayed this prayer. I'm just going to change one word. He said, you are a union God. That is true. I'm going to also say maybe you're a United Workers God. And we need you because you will lead us out of our troubles. That will happen through our work. We are not asking you to come down here and think for us. We can do that on our own. But Almighty Lord, we do ask for your aid. I ask for God's aid or whoever's aid, whatever spiritual, maybe it's the spiritual power of solidarity and social action, wherever we draw strength and inspiration from will continue to help us, aid us in this, what we're doing. It's difficult, it's challenging, it's going to run into conflict. There's going to be times when we're going to feel mightily oppressed if we haven't already felt it now. We're going to feel challenged, we're going to feel intimidated, we're going to feel harassed and bullied, made fun of maybe even. And this, though we're here for one another, the strength we share together is so powerful that it will move these mountains, or at least it will move a pathway through them, so that we will get to a place where you don't need to drive 2 hours away for what I heard tonight was virtually anything you need for your physical or mental health. That's insanity. So why can't that be here in Cumberland? For the communities of Allegheny County and the nearby surrounds. We should not be having to drive to places like Morgantown, Baltimore, Pittsburgh, Hagerstown for what we need. We should be able to get what we need here. And I can tell you that's why I'm here, is because the place I grew up in is exactly the same way. It happened a little bit earlier, but Decatur, Illinois is a city less than half the size of when I was a kid because it was a manufacturing town and all those manufacturing jobs left. Through the same forces that are doing the same that did the same thing here in Cumberland, by the way, with industry, and then force us to accept this craziness. I'm tired of moving. I'm tired of moving away to try to find a promised land when I think we're being told we're going to make the promised land and we're going to make it right here. Yes. Who are we?
Medicaid Army.
Who are we?
Medicaid Army.
Who are we?
Medicaid Army.
Forward together.
Forward together.
Step back.
2 steps forward, Betty.
One step back.
Forward together. 1 step back. We went double time last night. If you catch our live stream, or we're doing 2 steps forward too sometimes because we're excited to get there. You're probably excited to get some food or something. So God bless y'all. You got more? Oh, we got more. Can't leave.
Oh, is Benny singing?
Benny?
Who's angry?
All of us.
Who's really mad?
Yeah.
So what are we going to do about it?
Organize.
Organize. So a couple people have mentioned that the city is trying to make it illegal. They're banning food in the Washington headquarters park, which is conveniently where all of the homeless folks gather and people deliver food to them there. On October 2nd, we're going to Town Hall because they're having a meeting, and that is your call to action.
When was that again?
October 2nd.
October 2nd. Where?
Town Hall.
Town Hall.
City Council? It's not the same building.
Food?
City Council. 6 o'clock? 6 o'clock, October 2nd. City Council. A ban on food in a public park is ridiculous, and it is done on purpose. It is one park out of, 10 in the city of Cumberland? Why did they choose that one? Because that's where the homeless people live. That's why. Thank you. We got pizza.
Let's thank all of our presenters today, all of our testifiers, all of our poets, All of our members that came from long distances like Baltimore, Westminster. Where else did everybody come from? Here in Cumberland too. So let's thank everybody for being here. And Benny's going to be singing for us.
And we've got bass guitar.
Thank you, thank you, thank you,
Have
thank
bass
you.
guitar is going to accompany him.
You ready? All right, all right. I enjoyed everything that's going on. You know, I really
Mike's
did.
not on the camera.
Because, man, because I learned a lot. Because the same thing that they went through, I went through. You know, and I'm going through it now. But you know, I'm learning a lot. You know, I'm kind of tired, so I'm gonna sit down for a minute. Ready? We're gonna do the best we can, okay? I'm gonna start off sitting on the dock of the bay, watching the tide run away. Yeah, sitting on the dock of the bay, wasting time, fighting a system that's hurting you and I. I'm fighting a system that's hurting us every way. Yeah, I'm fighting, and I need you to fight with me. Yeah, we're fighting together, fighting a system today. Yeah, one more thing I like to say. The system is hurting me. I'm sick, I can't feed my children. I have no place to sleep. The system is hurting me, forcing me out on my own. But now I need the people to organize and fight together. Yeah, we're fighting a system that really hurting me. Yeah, we're fighting a system hurting you and I. Wait a minute. Go together. Go together. 2 steps forward and no steps backwards. 2 steps forward and no steps backwards. We're fighting together. Fighting the system, yeah. Yes, we are. We're fighting together. Organizing every way, yeah. 2 steps forward and no steps backwards. 2 steps forward and no steps backwards. 2 steps forward and no steps backwards. That's what we got to do. Thank you. Forward together.
Not one step back.
Forward together.
Not one step back.
Thank you.
Thank you.
And so,
Put the fools in the back.
finish
Put the fools in the back.
finish up the live.
Food in the back. Finish up front. I'm going in the back.
Turn the live off now then. All right, here we go.